I want to welcome again Nikki Bowman Mills, founder, publisher, and editor. In 2008, Nikki Bowman Mills, a Clay County native, founded New South Media, Inc., and serves as president of the company, publisher, and editor-in-chief. Her company publishes West Virginia Living, Morgantown, West Virginia Weddings, and Wonderful West Virginia magazines, as well as custom publications for a wide variety of clients. Her mission was to create high-caliber publications that change the perceptions of West Virginia by championing the state with positive stories. Because of Nikki's vision and leadership, what started as a regional publishing company has exponentially grown into a national multimedia company. A consummate entrepreneur and founder of Turn This Town Around, Nikki champions small business development and entrepreneurship. Because of her efforts, she was honored in 2019 by the West Virginia Hospitality and Tourism Association with the Excellence in Tourism Entrepreneurship Award. She also recently was chosen by SCORE as an American Small Business Champion. In 2016, Nikki was given the West Virginia Excellence in Support of the Arts Award by the West Virginia Division of Culture and History. And in 2015, she received a national award as a top woman in media by Folio. In 2014, she was also honored with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Women Business Champion Award. In addition, the West Virginia Division of Tourism has recognized Nikki and her company with 7-star of the industry awards. Nikki graduated from West Virginia University and received her master's degree in writing from DePaul University in Chicago. She lives in Morgantown with her husband, Michael Mills. Wow, thank you, Nikki. This is quite impressive, and thank you for all that you're doing for our state, because we do need these positive images and positive stories to get out there, because we have it, I think, the most beautiful state, but I'm a little biased. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to share a little bit about my story, my company story, and then of course to talk a little bit about Wonderful West Virginia magazine. It is interesting, you know, when I think back on starting out, and before we start, I'm like, I want to make sure, so if I share my screen, I have screen sharing capability, yes, right?
Yes, okay. Yes. If not, I can do that for you.
Okay, I'm going to do that and see here if this works. So, and you're gonna, let's see, host disabled.
Hold on. I don't know. Okay, I've done something. Just give me new share. It should. Oh, geez. Hold on. Eric has made me, he wants me to launch the meeting. I don't want to launch the meeting. I can't get out of this. Oh, geez. Hold on. I think I've done something. If I miss you.
Up there where it says, let's see, view on, no.
Okay. It wants me to launch. When I hit the share button, now I'm out of the meeting. Hold on. Here we go. I'm going to make you a co-host.
Okay.
Then you can share the screen.
I am a co-host. Do you, this will stop sharing the other screen. Okay. I think we will.
There we go.
Is that right there?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. Let's go back here. Okay. There we go. So first I just thought I would tell you a little bit about me, and what brought me, or where I'm from, and then what brought me back to the state. So I grew up in Clay County, and you know, my people, we often laugh. You know, my grandmother was from Jumping Gut, West Virginia, and that was jumping without a G. So we lived in some pretty rural hollers for sure. So you know, growing up in Clay as a child, I moved. I graduated from Herbert Hoover High School, so just kind of always stayed on the Elk River. But I lived with my grandmother for a while in a trailer park in Two Run. And well, actually, my grandmother lived in Duck. I grew up in a trailer park in Two Run, but I always went. She worked at the county courthouse in Clay, and after school, I would always go to work after elementary school. I'd walk down to work with her, and then sometimes she'd let me go to the library, and I would just sit in the library and I would look at National Geographic magazine and Wonderful West Virginia magazines. Those were my two favorite publications. And even to this day, I can smell, like, they have a certain smell about them. And so if you've subscribed or know, you know that there's a smell on these magazines, and I could still smell that today. But I loved them because of the photography, and I would sit, as I've shared this story many times, but I would sit at my grandmother's house, where we had the coffee table had the family Bible, and then it had the stack of Wonderful West Virginia magazines. So from a very early age, I probably held it in such high esteem because it sat there right beside the family Bible, and I would sit and pretend that I would write the stories. I had a little tiny typewriter, and I would try to type the stories, and I'd draw, pictures. And so I often, looking back, really think that my love of the printed page started then, and it's really pretty awesome now to actually be the editor of Wonderful West Virginia. So I grew up in rural Clay County, and then moved away. I graduated from WVU. I went to Chicago. I got my master's, and then I became the editor of a political magazine in Chicago. And I quickly learned after a couple of years that working on a political magazine in Chicago was not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Most people that I wrote stories about ended up in federal prison. That's no kidding. I think about every governor that I interviewed and ended up, I think about George Ryan, I think about Blagojevich, there was a long list. So politics in Chicago was really interesting, especially coming from West Virginia, to see, to get a front row seat to watch some of the things unfold there. I often share a story that I worked at the Union League Club, which is in Chicago, and it was a fundraiser once for Carol Moseley Braun, who was the first African American woman elected to Congress. And there were interesting people there. We had Rosa Parks came in, and I remember I was so excited to actually meet Rosa Parks, and and I was taking photographs for the magazine, and there was a photograph of Rosa Parks, Carol Moseley Braun, I can't remember if it was Clinton, and then there was this guy that was in the picture that I had to look him up and find out, how do I spell his name, and it ended up being this a junior state legislator named Barack Obama. And I remember calling somebody saying, trying to describe him and saying, look, there's this guy and I'm not quite sure who he is. So I laugh about that now. I wish I had kept those photographs for sure. So, but I had some really interesting experiences in Chicago, and then that took me on to DC, and then later Mississippi, where I was the editor of Mississippi Magazine. And while in Mississippi, it was a lifestyle publication, and I kept saying, I really wish, West Virginia had a magazine like this. I had an aunt, my aunt Dee Braley, was visiting, and she said, Nikki Lee, she's like, you know more about magazine publication than anybody in West Virginia. You should move back home and start it. Because at the same time as all of us who have deep roots in West Virginia, or who have chosen to make West Virginia our home, there's something that pulls you back here. And as a 20-something, I often share this story. I'm not very proud of it, but I counted the days until I could leave West Virginia, because I think I grew up being told, if you wanted to do something with your life, if you wanted to be successful, you couldn't do it here. There weren't opportunities here. And so I did. And it took 16 years. I was away 16 years before I realized, this, my heritage was something to be worn like a badge of honor. And that is what made me unique and different. And maybe the change that I needed to make in the world was actually back where I was from, back home. So once I realized that, I couldn't get back to West Virginia soon enough. So in 2008, I did just that. I moved back and I started my company, which is New South Media. And the first publication that I launched was West Virginia Living. Shortly, I knew I did this, I self-funded. I had met with different investors and folks, but no, everyone told me it wouldn't work. There wouldn't be folks who were interested. People in Wheeling didn't care about what was going on in Charleston or the Eastern Panhandle. And I had met with a lot of different focus groups, and I didn't believe that. I felt like we wanted to know what was going on around the state, because I felt that if I could create a publication that had championed all of West Virginia, that maybe, because looking at my own experience, I grew up in Clay County. I had never been to Lewisburg. I had never been to Wheeling or the Eastern Panhandle. And if I had known that these towns like Shepherdstown or Lewisburg or Wheeling, existed, maybe I wouldn't have been so anxious to leave the state. All I had seen was my little, box of a place, and I hadn't been exposed to other people, other ideas, other businesses. So I knew it was really important to me when I came back to whatever I did with my company. The mission was going to be to change perceptions of West Virginia. Not just how other people from the outside look at us, but how we look at ourselves as West Virginians. And to me, that is our most important job. So with the first magazine, and this is the copy that I'm sharing is the actual first cover of the magazine, I launched West Virginia Living, self-funded it, knew I had enough money to do 2 issues, and that was it. And if I couldn't get the advertising base to support it, I was going to fail. If you all recall, 2008 was absolutely the worst time it was the worst time since the invention of the press for print. It was terrible. And, but I had already done, years of work. I was in this, and I thought, well, gosh, I'm going to know really quickly if I can do this or if I'm going to fail. And if I can make it through this, recession, then maybe, we've got something that we can build on. So I did just that. After the second issue of Living, I launched West Virginia Weddings, and West Virginia Weddings is what we call the bridal Bible for the state. The state never looks more beautiful than in weddings, because everybody's beautiful, happy. It's capturing destinations in West Virginia and really showcases the wedding industry. So anyone who serves that, from florists to cakes to venues to gowns, you name it, it's in West Virginia Weddings. West Virginia Weddings got so large at one point, it was 700 pages, that we broke it into 2 issues. It was an annual issue, and then now we do it twice a year. Living comes out 4 times a year. Weddings is twice a year, a spring, summer, and a fall, winter. Then a couple years later, as we were starting to grow, I'm based in Morgantown. Actually, I'm based in Granville, West Virginia. I'm right across the river from Morgantown now. My husband and I bought 10 warehouses directly across the river from the Coliseum, and we moved my office there, and we've been working we're building an event space, and we've got another business that next door called Appalachian Mercantile. So it's been a really cool economic development initiative that we've been working on here. But Morgantown Magazine really was launched to be more of a city pub, to really capture Morgantown is one of the fastest growing towns in West Virginia. It's very transient. A lot of people coming in didn't know what, because of the university and the hospitals and Milan at the time, there really was a need to get information out to people. And it's also the youngest demographic in the state too, as far as our population. So Morgantown Magazine launched, and then I believe it was in 2014, we competed for Wonderful West Virginia. And this is a publication that is, of course, it's owned by the state. It's a state publication. I own the other three. This is one that we serve as, we do all of the editorial, manage it, print, we, oversee the printing of the publication and work really closely with the Division of Natural Resources on Wonderful. When we had the opportunity, when that came up for bid, I was so excited because here I thought, this is the publication that I've always held near and dear to my heart. What an incredible opportunity to be its caretaker and to be in this long line of folks who have really, grown it year after year. So, and we'll talk more about Wonderful in a minute. This is just sort of a collage of a bunch of other publications so that we also do. So I also, we have a custom content creation kind of silo business to the company called Narrative by New South. And through that, we do a lot of other publications. So we work with clients. We've done cookbooks. We've done history of 100-year-old. We just did a book for Bowles Rice, the law firm. And we do a lot of work on travel guides with West Virginia tourism as well. So, and different CVBs, Commission and Visitors Bureaus around the state. So this is just kind of a collection of covers of publications that through the years that we've worked on. And we've also grown the company into, we've offer what we call West Virginia Loving Local boxes. And the concept of that is we source, all locally made products. Some of our seasonal boxes are tied to the magazine. So we offer products that are featured in that magazine. So when people subscribe to the box, then they get the copy of West Virginia Living, but then products that are featured in the magazine. And then we have standalone boxes like a Taste of West Virginia box. These are all locally sourced products, food products. We have a sweet box. We have just a random group of boxes. So that was one thing that we did to kind of expand and diversify and grow the brand. So, I told you about, leaving the state and moving back to launch the company, and then getting the opportunity to compete for Wonderful West Virginia. So when I first found out that we were awarded Wonderful West Virginia, I get visit my grandmother, and I tell her, now mind you, I've launched all these other magazines in the meantime, and I show up and I say, Grandma, I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, we're going to be doing, and the magazine is still sitting on the same coffee table. And I have that coffee table today, which is interesting. But I said to her, we're going to be doing this magazine. And she said, that's just wonderful. She was so excited. And she said, I was just really worried about you. I'm so glad that you're going to do something worthwhile with your life. And I thought, okay, well, I'm glad Wonderful West Virginia made her feel better about the trajectory of my life. So she was very, very proud. That was the one magazine that she, that meant I think I had made it, So, but anyway, we just recently celebrated the 85th anniversary of Wonderful West Virginia. And, as you're hard pressed to find someone who grew up in West Virginia who doesn't say, oh, my grandmother got this magazine, or my parents had this magazine, and I always would flip through it. Their stories are very similar to mine, but you think about it, it's been around since 1936. And, when one of the things that what we talked about in this anniversary issue, which came out in July of this year, was that before it actually became Wonderful West Virginia, it had a lot of different names, and when it started, it was the West Virginia Conservation Bulletin, which was more like kind of a newsletter. That was the beginnings of it. It morphed into, and then I'm sharing a couple of the old covers to show you kind of the growth of it. But it was kind of a mimeographed looking newsletter. That was what it was in the early days. Then, as it grew, I think in 1941, it became the West Virginia Conservation Magazine. It was like 24 pages, maybe it grew to about 36. And it would stay about that same size, even to this day. Of course, with technology and printing, the photography I believe comes even more to life through the color and the digital capabilities that we have now. So back when it was West Virginia Conservation, it also had the name Outdoor West Virginia, kind of morphed. It was Outdoor West Virginia because I believe someone said conservation was a word that was just overused. So then it became Outdoor West Virginia. And it wasn't until, and I believe it was then Governor Arch Moore, who created the tagline "Wild and Wonderful West Virginia" for the state, and at that time, kind of mandated that the magazine's name be changed, and that's when that happened. So most people call it by the wrong name. I mean, today most people will come up to me and say, "Oh, do you do that Wild and Wonderful magazine? Or do you do Wild and Wonderful West Virginia?" And as many times as we say, it's never been called Wild and Wonderful West Virginia. It's just Wonderful West Virginia. But I think it's because that launch of time with, of course, that we all know Wild and Wonderful, that we automatically assume that's the name of it. So it became Wonderful West Virginia in January of 1970. Now the folks, and here are some old covers of the magazine. So you can see how the nameplate has changed, the design, and the use of photography too. This man is really important to the history of the publication. This is Sonny Hyde, and Sonny Hyde was he and then later his family had been involved with this magazine for like 45 years. And he launched a lot of, not only did he take a lot of the photography, he was also a pilot, so he did aerials and really captured the state that in ways that those photographs were shared beyond our borders. And folks, I never got to meet him. That's one of my great regrets. I really wish I had that opportunity, but he really helped turn Wonderful West Virginia into a National Geographic type magazine. There was he started out as a photographer, and then I served as editor of the piece. And folks, there was a quote, and I was trying to find this in our issue. It said, there was someone who said, once the magazine came out, now we were no longer a poor state, that we were rich. The photographs in Wonderful West Virginia proved it. And that was really an important part of the history and the changing, beginning of the changing of perceptions of West Virginia. So This is a photo of some other well-known photographers. Steve Shaluta, a young Steve Shaluta, is over to the left. Steve Shaluta is the one that I remember the most. I'm looking at his photography in wonderful West Virginia, but Sonny Hyde gave him his start, and really trained him. And then he, as we were becoming the editors of the piece, he retired. So in our very first issue of the magazine, we kind of dedicated it to him and did a big feature on Steve Shaluta and his photographs. I'd like to sometime, and I haven't done this, but I kind of want to go back and look at how many photographs of Steve Shaluta have been in the magazine, how many of Sonny, you know, like just kind of get an idea of who these photographers are, because they do it and they don't get paid. You know, this is an incredible gift, I think, that they give the readers of wonderful West Virginia. They not only, you know, take these amazing photographs, but then they're sharing them out for all of us to enjoy. So this photo I really love because they did a day in the life of West Virginia, and they're looking at all of the submissions. I mean, I just sit here and kind of giggle because they're looking at it on Lightbox, and they're looking at slides. And of course, now today, when we have a photo competition, the photos are emailed to us and we pull them up. You know, we look at quite a bit, but we're not having to open envelopes and keep them all organized in cardboard boxes like they're doing in this picture. So one of the things that we've kind of talked about, and anyone who is familiar with wonderful West Virginia, you know that photography is just is so important to the storytelling component of the magazine. And so I thought I would share some of my favorites, or some, I mean, there's so many, it was tough. I mean, we could just look at photos the entire time. But, you know, what I think is so important, what a lot of people don't realize, is that when you create a magazine, you, especially when photography is important, the quality of the paper is really important. So when I talked about the smell of National Geographic and wonderful, it's because the page is saturated with ink, and it's holding, the paper is of a quality that can hold and let these photographs really shine. The other important part of the design, and something when we took over, we did a redesign of the piece. And we did that because I really believe white space in any design is just as important as the photograph that you're using, because you've got to let it breathe. You've got to let it live on the page. You've got to let your mind, you want to rest your eye on an image. So we kind of what we call in the business, you know, we looked at the grid, the design grid, cleaned it up a little bit, left a lot of white space just to make it easier to, and better for the photographs to kind of pop off the page. But these and I've credited the photographers down on the bottom. This is a Jesse Thornton photograph of Droop Mountain. These are some of my absolute favorites. Danny Carpenter's shots of the animals. That duck is just exquisite in my mind. I hope it's translating well to you on the screen. But our goal is to talk about, you know, a lot of folks, when I tell you, you know, we work on West Virginia Living and weddings and wonderful West Virginia is very different than West Virginia Living. West Virginia Living is a lifestyle publication, wonderful, and we talk a lot about towns and different businesses, and wonderful is focusing on our outdoor, our natural environment and what we find there. So they really do have two different types. I mean, the audiences can cross over, but the magazines are very different, although they both, photography is very important to me. I do a lot of photography as well. And so they both really put the premium on photography. as an important part of the storytelling component too. And of course, Randall Sanger, I think, is just, gosh, he can shoot the New River Gorge like nobody else I know. His photos are amazing. But when people look at wonderful West Virginia, and usually the photographers, one of the things I love, like, when we're looking at this, like this image, very rarely would any of us have the opportunity to be sitting right there and see that train rolling through, locomotive 5 coming through. We put ourselves, in a moment that we wouldn't get to experience in person, just like even those photos as well. This angle too. I've been down probably close to where he shot this, and I'll tell you, my photos never turn out like that. And of course, the most photographed spot in West Virginia, I had to include Babcock State Park. This is, I think, one of the toughest. Every time I'm there, I think I'm going to get a unique photo of the grist mill. We always see, the same kind of iconic shot. And I will tell you, no matter where I go, this is what it looks like. This is where it is. Another great scene in West Virginia. So something I wanted to share that we have done, that we changed, not only did we redesign the publication, we introduced something called Wondergrams. And Wondergrams was an idea trying to bring in a younger audience. So one of the challenges that we're having, of course, with wonderful West Virginia, as we were talking about earlier, was attracting this younger audience and getting them engaged, because as our readership, gets older, we need to be bringing up more people in the ranks as subscribers. And Wondergrams was a nod to Instagram, where a lot of folks, will take photos and like to share them. So we felt like it was a natural fit for us to go out and allow readers to share with us their photos. And so we asked folks to hashtag whenever they post a picture that they would like to have in Wondergrams, is that they will hashtag it, hashtag Wondergrams. Carla, our photographer and our art director, will go in, look, and choose photos for each issue, and then we feature them. We feature them there. But Wondergrams has been great, so much so that we have launched we've created a book called The Wondergrams. It's an Instagram shape. It's a square shaped book. It's like that thick, as 5 years worth of Wondergram submissions. So these are all reader submitted photos that are they're amazing. And we did this, quite honestly, we're doing it as a fundraiser of sorts, for the publication, but also as a way to memorialize and thank our readers for participating and sharing their photos. So it's a beautiful, beautiful book. We had hoped to have it out by this holiday season. We're doing, you can reserve your copy if you're interested. I put the link down there at the bottom, or you can call our office. We were hoping to get it out by Christmas, but with all the supply chain issues and it just kept getting pushed back. We just couldn't get it done or get the paper from Canada. We, I guess, locked the border. Some of the paper was coming from there, and it was just kind of an interesting conundrum of resource issues for it. So now it's slated to probably come out in February, I believe. It'll be on press in January. So here are some covers of Wonderful that we've done, and a lot of folks ask, well, what makes a good cover? And you'll get a million different answers probably to that question. I tend to believe it's something that, it makes you pick it up. It's something that grabs your attention and encourages you to pick up the magazine and flip through it. This spider one, I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I have a problem with snakes and spiders. So every time I have to write about them in the magazine, I feel like somebody's just torturing me, but I'm getting a little bit better. The bear cover got a lot of great responses. The ladybug has too. And then there are some where people were like, why did you put that on the cover? This one on the far right, this cover, we got a lot of complaints about, which was interesting. I wouldn't have anticipated that, but we did. And I love, of course, the eagles too there. So, you know, part of what I wanted to kind of talk about and I mentioned to this just a little bit, was the importance of sharing, especially, you know, is wonderful. We're looking at trying to bring in a younger subscriber base too, is the importance of sharing and gift giving. And with wonderful West Virginia, it's more important than ever. And I have really, in my last issue of the magazine, I challenged folks. I challenged, if you're a grandparent, you know, give a subscription to a grandchild or to someone who you think would really benefit, and keep that tradition that we were talking about earlier of seeing the magazine out and having that appreciation and pride in being a West Virginian. And I wanted to share, if you are interested in him, where you can go. So Wonderful West Virginia has a website, wonderfulwv.com, and you can go through that portal or call. And then the other publications are listed under there as well. But I wanted to make sure I left enough time to ask, just talk, because a lot of times the best part of the conversation is to answer questions and just engage together on. So do I stop share there? Did I do that right? Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm going to start. I'm one of these that, like I said, my grandmother had the West Virginia magazine, and I loved it. I loved going to her home. It was always there. And I love, like you said, feeling it, just everything about it. And then she would give me her old copies, and I would cut the pictures and make things with them. And I'm just so thankful that it has this rich history of 85 years, and you're keeping that going. Thank you for that. Sincerely, thank you so much. I had no idea that you publish these other magazines. I just recently subscribed to West Virginia, the West Virginia magazine, and now I'm going to subscribe to West Virginia Living because I love that publication too. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I just think it was a really informative program that really highlights the different varieties of magazines that you're involved with, and they really are wonderful. I'm wondering how far from home West Virginia Living is displayed. You know, we're only here 45 years, so we're relative newcomers to the state. But when we talk to people from out of state, they visualize West Virginia in the traditional negative stereotype. They don't see what we see. They don't see the Huntingtons, the Shepherdstown, Lewisburg, Morgantowns. They just see what they've been told. How far and wide can you get the distribution of West Virginia Living?
So West Virginia Living is distributed across the country. I think we have subscribers in every state, and it's in national newsstands in about 22 different states. Mostly up and down, you know, the Eastern Seaboard. So from New York, you know, to Florida, and then out west. We do incredibly well in California, Missouri, and New York. It is kind of interesting to see where we sell well. Canada, we are sold in Canada as well, and we do really, really well there. And we get a lot of folks who come through West Virginia from Canada. Wonderful West Virginia, of course, is I don't believe Wonderful has as large of a newsstand distribution as West Virginia Living does, but it has subscribers that I would dare say probably hit every state as well. So, one of the things you mentioned, I think it's important is this, as I said, part of our mission was to change perceptions of West Virginia. And what I often find is that most people don't have a perception at all. They don't know anything about us. So what if we can get to them and show them the wonderful things that West Virginia has to offer before they can latch on to some kind of negative stereotype, which most certainly we combat all the time in national media, that helps change that perception. It helps drive people to our state, not just from tourism, but also to decide to live and move here, because what's happening right now is there's a lot of focus on moving to West Virginia. A lot of folks who are leaving California, a lot of folks who are leaving other big cities who are looking for a lifestyle that we can offer that they can't find in other places. So we are situated right now in a really good spot to get the word out even more and to attract more folks, to come here.
So do you have data on whether most of the subscribers have lived in West Virginia at one time or not?
And it depends on which, magazine. So for Wonderful, no, we don't know how, what that looks like. What I can tell you is from conversations that I have had, it's really interesting that Wonderful and West Virginia Living as well, people love to give it as gifts, as a gift subscription to, this is what my state is like, to a family member or to, to someone who may come here to hunt or someone who may travel through or vacation here, but they don't necessarily live here. That makes up a lot of it. And then of course, the people who have left West Virginia and come back. We have an incredible group of very devoted readers of Wonderful West Virginia. Every issue, without fail, we will get numerous letters, actually handwritten letters that will come in and just share stories and how important the magazine has been to them. Oh my gosh, I've got to find one in my emails and read you. This will tell you what I sent this to. Let me see if I can find this letter that just came. Yeah, okay, listen to this. And this man, I won't share his name, but this man told me, he actually emailed, most of them handwrite, but this gentleman emailed me and he said, "Dear Mills, may I call you Nikki? This is not a note. I have trouble writing notes and I rarely text. I once took a writing class through a local Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, wherein the instructor was a retired newspaper columnist. He encouraged 500-word submissions. Needless to say, I failed to comply, so on with my story. I am an 87-year-old native West Virginian, born in Parkersburg and raised in Clarksburg. I left the state to attend college, Penn State, boo hiss, at the suggestion of my parents who were native Western Pennsylvanians. My father brought electricity down to the rustics in 1926-27 with Mon Power. Upon graduation, I worked in Fostoria, Ohio for 6 months before enlisting in the U.S. Navy. Following officer candidate school in Rhode Island, Uncle Sam decided to station me in Southern California for 3 years, where I met my later-to-be wife. On my own, I didn't have enough sense to stay in California, so I returned to Ohio. 2 years later, my then wife and I stored our limited household goods, personal effects, and left for the Golden State. I found employment in Northern California in Silicon Valley. Eventually, we bought a house, produced 2 sons, and have paid taxes here ever since. All of the above is simply background against which I come to my reason for penning this article. Sometime your records are better than my memory. During the first 5 years of our relocation, which would be 1962 and 67, my late sainted mother Christmas gifted us an annual subscription to whatever was then Wonderful West Virginia magazine. Look it up. I've forgotten exactly the year. With her gift card, she wrote the following words: "So that you never forget." Those words have been embedded in my mind for over 60 years. At first, I renewed my subscription out of an obligation to my parents. I probably dropped it in 1968 and 69 when we lived in Hong Kong. However, I don't recall a year when the latest issue wasn't proudly displayed on our family room coffee table here in California, and later in the living room of our cottage on Lake Floyd near Salem in Harrison County, West Virginia. Now you're going to hear the rest of the story. The back end of this drawn out story is that I have continued a relationship with my family and friends in West Virginia. Since retiring in 1998, I have driven across the country annually 25 times, purchased a cottage at Lake Floyd, 10 miles west of Clarksburg, hosted my family each July 4th week, and at other times throughout the summer months, visited with classmates through the state, attended appropriate high school class reunions, visited state parks and recreational areas covered by wonderful West Virginia. I just returned from a 2-month jaunt to West Virginia this year. Fortunately, I was in the area when my 95-year-old sister passed away in August at the Clarksburg Rehabilitation and Skilled Nursing Facility. I was blessed to be able to visit with her a half dozen times prior to her passing. My mother's gift 6 decades ago was not in vain. It has been and will continue to be a great source of pride and satisfaction that I haven't forgotten my roots. For that, I thank you and your staff. And then what you couldn't see, and I should have shared, he sent this absolutely beautiful photo of he and his 95-year-old, I'm going to get all teary-eyed, walking along the lake together, holding hands. And you just think about that. What we do, you never know how someone's going to react to it. So whether he has it on his coffee stand, his coffee table in California, who picks that up? Someone who may be visiting them and say, oh, this is the state that you're from. And it gives him an opportunity to say, oh, it's the most beautiful place in the world. So sorry to get all so emotional.
Aw, that's a beautiful story. And I had the privilege on my dad's side. Sadly, my dad's brother and sister both moved to New Mexico and upstate New York. But every summer they would come, or not my New Mexico relatives, but my New York relatives. And my aunt by marriage, her family, who all lived out of town but one. And we would vacation in a state park in West Virginia. We preferred Canaan Valley and Blackwater Falls. Those were our first 2 choices. And if those got filled, then we would go to Bluestone or Twin Falls, and one time Watauga. And, I'm so thankful that my family, I live in Huntington, I'm from Huntington. We didn't travel very far, but we traveled far enough to see the beauty of West Virginia. And your magazine brings that back to me, because I can't, just pick up and go travel. I'm still working, but I can see, and a lot of those sites are familiar to me. And and that letter, just that probably says to you, wow, it's all worth it. Your hardest day, and you get a letter like that, you're like, it's all good. It's all good.
It is wonderful. And it's so nice, to get, because you don't know, when we're putting out a magazine, Wonderful comes out every month, we're off to the next one, so it's very hard to, by nature of what we do, we're constantly working on something. So sometimes you don't get the opportunity to sit and reflect. But those letters mean so much to us. I have a gentleman who I fly fish. I don't fly fish very well, but I fly fish. I love it. It's my escape. And I have a gentleman who always sends me hand-tied flies. He's like, I love hearing reading your editor's note about going fly fishing. And so then he tells me what I'm doing wrong. And then he sends me fly fishing. They're incredible readers. All of our readers, West Virginia Living too, but what I find is the folks who subscribe to Wonderful West Virginia, they have just this incredible emotional attachment to the publication. That is, it's a great sense of responsibility that we carry, that we've been entrusted to protect this magazine and to share. And it goes beyond just the magazine, because it's the state. We feel like we're telling, through Wonderful and through West Virginia Living, we're telling the state's story. And the more that we can get it out there, the more people that we can reach with these stories, the better everyone is. So, and it is true, to your point, I think what's sometimes we don't even know what hidden gems we have in our own backyard, and the beauty of both of these publications is that it exposes you and inspires you to travel to a place that that maybe you've never been. And it just kind of, it broadens your horizons, because I believe the more that we know about the rest of our state, the better West Virginians we become, the more pride that we have. It's more of a well-rounded picture of what it means to be a West Virginian.
And what I think is so fascinating, that you've got this magazine that's 85 years old, but then you're also reaching younger audiences with your hashtag, with your West Virginia West Virginia Weddings. I love that magazine. I love it for the different venues, the different ideas. And if you look at that magazine, a lot of venues, you see it's such beautiful scenery. A lot of these are outdoor weddings or outdoor receptions. So I'm just quite impressed. I had no idea you are behind all this.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I was in Target. This was before COVID, and I was checking out, and I was in line in Target, and the magazines were there, and there was these two ladies. They had to have been 80 something, and they were in front of me, and one woman had a copy of the Weddings magazine, and the other woman said, "Why in God's name do you have a copy of the Weddings magazine? You're not getting married." And of course I perked up when I heard this conversation, and I realized it was our publication. And the other lady said, she said, "I love this magazine." She said, "This, I love to look through and see all of the beautiful, scenery." And it's funny because Gordon Gee, President Gee, of course you all know who he is. He, after every issue of every magazine that we put out, I get a note from him, a handwritten note, and he has read it cover to cover. And his favorite magazine is Weddings, is West Virginia Weddings. So who would have thought? Anyway, so he reads about, all the people, and he knows maybe, some of them were students or, children of friends and, what have you. But yeah, it's a beautiful magazine. I look at a lot of photos for that one. We probably look at about 5,000 wedding photos for each issue of Weddings. So by the time it comes out, I need a vacation.
Well, our daughter is 12, and she loves to look at the wedding dresses. So. Any other comments or questions, or we can add to this wonderful conversation we're having?
Just to thank you. Very interesting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's lunchtime, but I can't thank you enough for taking time to speak with us. And I wanted to add the picture of the photographers, and Diane will know this. David Patella is I believe a Hamiltonian, and he's been well renowned in this area and across the state. I recognized him.
Yeah.
So it's very nice that I didn't realize a lot of these photographers donate, or at one point donated their photographs.
And that has been something that I think has been, that has happened probably, it was beyond me, we kind of inherited that, but I think it is that they do take great pride in showcasing their photography in that publication, because of the history of it, the heritage that exists, but also that it allows for the photo. It holds the photographs really well. A lot of times photographers, when you share a photo in a printed piece, it can be cropped or, and you just get aggravated because that's not the way you intended the world to view the photo. We really are very sensitive. I have an amazing photographer on staff. Her name's Carla Whitford, and she works very closely with all of our state's finest photographers. And we're always on the look for some more, other people that we can showcase their work, but they're wonderful as a group. They're absolutely wonderful to work with.
And you said it allows them, although they don't charge a fee, it does allow them to showcase their work. And that sometimes can be worth more than just a fee that they would receive, that they're, you know, like you said, across the country, these magazines are being published. So, or being not published, but being sold and distributed. So that's wonderful. Thank you for that too. So you're doing a lot of great work, and I love your magazines. And
I have a great team. You know, we've grown it, you know, it's not just me. I have fantastic team. I mentioned Carla Whitford. We have a couple of editors, writers on staff. We use a lot of freelancers, contractors for content, and wonderful. But yeah, it takes a village. It takes everybody, because we all wear many different hats. I mean, sometimes we look at each other and we're thinking, which magazine are we talking about, and what year are we in? Because, you know, we typically, for living, we photograph a lot of that in-house ourselves, and we shoot a year ahead. So things are in season. So we can be at any given time. When we work on Wonderful, we're working 3 and 4 months ahead of a reader when they get it. So sometimes we feel like by the time Christmas is rolled around, we've already experienced it twice and we're already on to Easter, you know, so we're like, we just don't know where we are. So I'm very grateful to have a fantastic team who is as passionate about West Virginia as I am. So.
Well, and I think we can all agree that we still love print publications, and I love magazines, and I am a magazine hoarder. I hate to throw them away, so I try to relocate them somewhere but I do. I love magazines. I love getting a magazine in the mailbox. I don't know. I just love that.
Well, I know what we pay for print, so I love to hear it when people say I don't throw magazines away.
Oh, that's not, no, but it's so hard for me to part with magazines because I do go back and look at magazines. And, but I'm just the rich history of your West Virginia magazine, for keeping it going. Thank you. And thank you for being so innovative to reach other, different generations and different likes and different interests. So, wow, I'm just quite impressed. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was nice. It was nice seeing everyone. And,
Our
you
pleasure.
have ideas, story ideas, you can share. You can reach me at nikki@newsouthmedia.com, and you can email me anytime.
Okay. Well, I think I've got some ideas, so I'll email you.
Okay,
Well,
you do.
Thank you again. Honestly, this was
you.
a really wonderful presentation, and we didn't have as many on today, but this goes on our YouTube channel, which I send out, and people go back and view what they have missed. So thank you. This has been preserved, and I'm thankful that it has been. I think a lot of people are going to be anxious to see this presentation.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again. And everyone, good to see you, and we'll be in touch soon.